All right, we're on air. It is Thursday, June 27th, and this is a meeting to check in on active developer tasks for Backdrop CMS. Starting with an announcement of updates of contributed projects. We've had a ton of new modules this week. Field wrappers, unique field, menu node views, menu node API, and easy breadcrumbs all had official releases this week. So I don't know who's been busy. Somebody's been busy. It's great. So yeah, that's great. A big jump forward. It looks like there's an announcement here about Backdrop CMS being available on Packagist. Jeff, was that you? Do you want to give an update on that? I don't know who I did that.
Yeah, so I did a fork of Backdrop in Backdrop Ops. So that's Backdrop Apps / Backdrop-Composer. And I think that satisfies the need for people that want to use Composer. They can do a Composer require and get it. I have a few more ideas that I want to get going for infrastructure, but I think I can continue those ideas in that issue queue in Backdrop Ops.
Do you want to continue with the Drush announcement?
Sure. We had some activity in Drush lately, and we got through a big one, I don't know if it was 2 weeks ago, where we can now do Drush enable module and Drush disable module. So that was pretty exciting. BW Panda got us some better multi-site support, so that's great. I was working on testing infrastructure, so I have some basic sanity checks in there where it can test just for exit code zeros of a lot of the Drush commands, and likewise test them on a Drupal install to make sure we didn't break things over there. And Jacopot has a PR for Drush user create, and we could use a works for me style needs review there. But I think it's looking pretty good, and I've included it in the tests. So if we get that, that's great. But if not, it'll probably be merged in shortly.
That's great. We have a section for updates on backdropcms.org. I don't think anything has happened there this week, so we can skip that. And we'll
one thing about backdropcms.org is there's a PR up there that corresponds to the user dashboard. I assigned that to you, Jen. I think I assigned it to you.
Okay.
So that needs review.
Let's take a look. But let's roll into updates for project progress for me.
Okay.
You were typing at the same time.
So let's see. So Backdrop bug fix releases. 1.13.3 will be the next bug fix release. We've had an issue that's been open for a little while now. The views is none of operator has been broken since Backdrop 1.12.5. There's an issue at 36.14 that fixes the issue, and we are working through getting the tests validated there. Jen put in a lot of legwork this week getting the tests ported from the Drupal version of the same issue. And it looks like we're unblocked on that now, that the tests aren't passing, but some feedback from Gregory has made it so Jen knows what's going on there. So once that set of tests is passing, that can go in. That might be valid enough for us to make a new release once that goes through. There's also been a number of other smaller bug fixes and changes going through as well, thanks to merges and changes that have been going on. I'll say it on the record too that last week I asked for basically a little more help merging stuff, and I got it. So yay, thank you core committers for merging and putting stuff in all week long. So it's been awesome.
One thing to mention before we move to the minor release is that Herb made a call for, like, we have around 400 tickets that are labeled as bugs. So maybe we should focus on those as well. I know that we get overexcited with the new features and we mostly work on those, but yeah, And currently there are not, like, other than that that problem with the views, the rest that went in are just minor fixes here and there still.
Well, and I was going to bring that up too, and he specifically suggested triaging them somehow to identify the important ones. Is there currently a process to do that, or any ideas on how we could do that? Like sort of go through those and flag the most important ones? I don't know.
Yeah, usually the ones that are, quote, important are usually moved into the next bug fix release. So the ones that are tagged 113.3, for example, and there are currently 44 open issues that are almost entirely bugs that are in that tag. And so we could continue that, like adding more items in there. Although I think a good area of focus would be concentrating on the ones that are already tagged 113.3, those 44 issues,
Okay.
and then working through those. They're all in, not all, but a lot of these are in good shape. Like, hang on, let me see how many actually.
They all have pull requests because they have to have a pull request to get scheduled for the next milestone, unless they're big and bad. And the only big bad one is the one that's on our agenda. So they should all have pull requests.
A good indicator, although not perfect at the point, to see what's important is how many comments are in its bug thing, because it might be, I personally even have filed some bugs like maybe 2016, and I haven't been able to reproduce them ever since, or not able to reproduce them consistently, or find a pattern for them. So I'm just waiting for other people to just come and say, yeah, I just had that too. But these are not usually, really important ones. The important ones, you have a lot of people commenting, and you know it's a problem.
Yep, of those 113.3 issues, now that I've got this going, there are 13 that need review. There are 7 that have works for me labeled on it. And RTBC, there are 3. And so, yeah, there's a good number there that's all that they're really needing is review, or at least up until they get a review, and maybe after that we would find more issues. There are 22 of them that pull requests need work. So a lot of those have already received feedback and just need to be updated to include the addressed feedback. It might actually be easier to start with the needs work queue, because the needs work queue means that it's already been reviewed once.
Yep, makes sense.
But yes, we can add more issues into that if we want to triage more important issues, or any issue that needs to be surfaced. Yeah, add milestone candidate bug fix, saying I think this is a high priority issue, and then if it gets seconded, then we move it into the 113.3 milestone.
Okay, can I just clarify that I understand that correctly? I'm not really able to probably fix a lot of these bugs, but if I wanted to help triage them and just sort of look through to see if I think they're important and not yet in that milestone, that if I found something labeled bug fix, but not yet a 1.13 milestone, I could mark that as a milestone candidate?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And then the second person then comes along, and if they agree, then they can move it into 113.3 directly, and then they remove the 113, or they remove the milestone candidate tag.
Yeah. Okay. But back when we started, the process was bugs are serious, so they are all targeted for the next bug fix, but that was unmanageable. So we needed to sort of like have a smaller set, and the milestone has been removed, and I find that a good, a good move. But if something is important enough, it will eventually get attention. Someone will complain, and the milestone label will be added anyway. So it's not that we're going to miss anything important.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's the only item that we have pulled out for 113.3 as being like worthy of mentioning in the meetings. But like we just covered, there's lots of other issues in the 113.3 milestone that are of higher priority.
Can I just add one more question? Just as an example, I ran into a bug this week. When you disable the new dashboard, the menu item doesn't go away. Like, is that important? It seems like it's probably relatively easy to fix. I don't know, like I reported it. What do I do?
It's personally on my list. Like I marked it as unread, so I'll take a look over the weekend. No promise that I can fix it, but it sounds like you said. It sounds like an easy fix. It might be maybe an install hook that needs to fire if it's not happening. We just need to be careful. Yeah.
In terms of process, though, for stuff like that, like if you think it's important and needs to be tagged with a milestone, you can add the milestone candidate label for a bug fix. And then if someone else like Gregory comes along and goes, oh, I agree, he'll remove that label and put it into the milestone, even before it has a pull request. And if he doesn't agree, but he writes a pull request, you can put it in the milestone anyway, because there's a pull request on it.
I am interested in the process here, less than that specific one. And so one good reason to make that, to give it the milestone candidate, is that it's obviously really important, right? It's hurting people's use. This one is maybe not, I wouldn't consider important in that sense. But on the other hand, it might be easy and it's very visible. So
yeah, well, so if it's easy, then the pull request would be what usually would get it into that milestone, because if it's easy, someone will probably try and fix it, and then you'll get the pull request faster than you get a second on them.
Would you consider that an important thing or not? Would you just let that sit?
It definitely makes us look bad.
Yeah, it's not important functionality-wise, like it doesn't break things, but it is, as you said, it has high visibility when people disable it. So yeah, I would consider it sort of like a user experience task event. So yeah, and you know how I am with my OCDs as well.
That's all.
Yeah, processes wise, this is exactly why we have milestone candidate in the first place. And milestone candidate is a personal opinion. I think that this is important. So if you think it's important, that's all that you need. Like mark it milestone candidate, because the confirmation and then moving into the milestone is when other people weigh in saying, I also think this is important. So you have completely free reign and are encouraged to mark things milestone candidate when you personally feel it's important, regardless of anybody else. And then you get the confirmation, or we'll have a discussion possibly. Usually it's just me too, we even had it happen frequently. People are like, no, this isn't important, but it happened frequently, but it does happen.
It occurs to me that I should mark it and then just say why. Here's why I thought it was important, and then people can disagree.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That helps. Yep. Sometimes it's obvious, but yeah, it helps.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Okay, so 114. 114 is the next minor version of Backdrop that will include new features. It's September, or it will be released September 15th, 2019. It still seems far away, like there's so much summer between now and then. It's just wonderful. I've been noticing it seems people actually have more time recently. Like there's a lot of stuff that's going on. It's been wonderful. So let's see, the first item that we've got, and the feature freeze, of course, will be September 1st, roughly 2 weeks before the release. So the first item that we've got on the docket here that has been seeing a lot of activity this week, and I just wanted to mention it, is adding a Composer JSON file to core itself. That's issue 2257. As Jeff mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, though, he already has set up a Backdrop-Composer repository in Backdrop Ops that already puts Backdrop on Packagist and makes it so that you could install Backdrop via Composer. But issue 2257 is discussion over like more deep integration, and also like whether or not we should put it in the repository itself, or if what we have right now with the Backdrop Composer project and being on Packagist is sufficient for the purpose. So we're just soliciting more feedback. If you've got an opinion on Backdrop and Composer and the way that they should or could work together, issue 2257 is an interesting read with lots of good viewpoints expressed as to what we should do to integrate, if at all, with Composer in the Backdrop core project.
A quick summary of that is that there's some resistance, and with legitimate reasons, why we shouldn't add a composer.json file as it is, but the alternatives that were proposed was to add something like along the lines of default.settings.something. We could add something that denotes it as optional, as in optional.composer.json. And I think that most people are not.
Well, we don't think that would work. Like it won't work unless it's named correctly.
Yeah, but developers that need to use the Composer thing and do whatever they want to do with Composer, they can just rename it. Well, it won't work as it is, but yeah, the counter part of that is that since we have that new repo that Jeff created, the backdrop-composer, developers can use that.
There's also, I made a recommendation that we could include it in the Git project and remove it by the packaging script.
Yep.
And that way, the kinds of people who are likely to download the tarball wouldn't be scared away by a Composer file, but the kinds of people who are likely to do a Git clone would have it. So it would sort of separate the presence of the file by the type of person who's retrieving it.
Yep, all good ideas.
So there's just a lot of options in there for like how we could approach that. And I think we just need to have more people weigh in. I think for now, Jeff, your solution is great, but I think we should still talk about it. So see if there's a better way to handle it. And I think that's tagged with 114 because we wanted to have people talk about it until the next release. So not urgent, but.
Yep. So the issue number on that again is 2257. Okay, great. So next up, we've got the list of issues that have been advocated for by various community members and are also in the 114 release. And so as a reminder to anyone out there, the way that we're kind of prioritizing things to discuss during these meetings, these issues require advocates, someone to push for progress on them, not necessarily someone leading the development, but just someone that is coordinating and organizing progress on the issue. So if you would like to advocate an issue, it's really simple. You just post a comment saying, I would like to advocate for this issue, and then edit the summary to say that you are the advocate on it. And then that process of becoming in the 114 milestone is the same as we just discussed earlier for bug fixes. You say, you tag it with milestone candidate and minor version. And then if somebody else agrees, then now that issue both has the 114 tag and it has an advocate. And then we add it to this agenda to start talking about it on a weekly basis. We also encourage that person to hop on these calls to talk about those issues every week. So the first one that I'll cover is issue 1992, for which I'm the advocate. That is signatures on packages, digital signatures on packages. This has to do with the automatic update initiative that we would like to ensure the security of packages that you download from through the installer, which come from GitHub but are packaged by backdropcms.org. This work has been led by John Franklin, and it's on my plate basically to get project module working with the code that John has assembled for us. I haven't made progress on this issue in the past 2 weeks, actually, but I am hoping to continue to work on project module first, get backdropcms.org signing and updating projects archives, like as they're being created, get the digital signatures into projects, and then we'll work on the corresponding part to make Backdrop itself actually start respecting those signatures. So I don't have any other updates there, unfortunately, so I'll just continue on. Fieldable files. This is your issue, Jen, 2632. Can you give us an update?
So I haven't made any progress on this since last week, but where I was last week is that I started moving all of the file display settings into a widgety thing on the field display settings. But I ran into an issue when I was testing where I tried to upload a file using the individual file upload form and I got a fatal. So I'm currently trying to figure out the file upload fatal problem first, but making progress on the UI stuff.
Cool. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Okay. Trusted host patterns, issue 2568. Gregory?
Yep. So there hasn't been any movement in that issue for like 2 weeks now, and it's just waiting for review. Jen had some feedback just to change the link to the documentation to go to API. I've done that. So I just need people to review it. So the way that this has been implemented is that it's less intrusive than V8. So as in, we warn people about not having specified trusted hosts, and we support setting them, but we do not enforce them. There's follow-up for that to allow editing those hosts from the user interface, but that can come as a follow-up. This is the basic implementation of it in the settings PHP file. And the user interface facing part is the respective entry in the status page, the site status page. Yeah,
cool.
People that want to review it, welcome.
Great. And you've got another issue, configurable layout templates, because that trusted host patterns is kind of pushed forward to the point as far as you can take it. So tell us about this other issue, 3755.
Yeah, so last update was that Doc Wilmot posted a few questions. So he's gotten it to a point where the MVP tasks are almost complete, and he posted a series of questions with regards to what direction. There was some feedback there about how to move forward, but there are some things that are unclear. He's still working on it. We still need reviews. I found out some tiny issues here and there, and I'm currently working on a pull request to automatically generate icons, because it's one of the things that he asked how to move forward with. I think that was a proposal by Jen that we need a different icon, and I'm halfway in generating automatically icons with the respective regions. So yeah, I hope that this goes well. Yeah, more testing, I guess, and more work, but it's looking well.
Wow, this is really crazy. I haven't seen this, but very neat. So the basic premise is that layout templates get settings potentially, and the ones out of the box that we currently have wouldn't have any settings because they don't have any settings now. But the purpose for having a template have settings is so that you could configure it so that you could set up rows and columns and make a dynamic template. And
this is the flexible template from Panel.
Yeah, it's basically a template creator from the user interface.
Mm-hmm.
And
very cool.
Yeah, and I thought that maybe the ones that ship with core, we can later on as a follow-up add the ability to clone them, and then they become sort of like configurable as well. We make clones of them, and then people can add rows and things on them. But
the default examples.
There's more ideas, but after that.
So many ideas.
I just want to say I looked at it after last week's meeting and was really impressed.
Yeah. Dr. has been doing an amazing job on sifting through all of the feedback that everyone's left him and implementing stuff and asking questions when he needs to. And it's coming along so fast. It looks really great.
I think it's the flagship sort of like feature for 1.14.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it should have been
I assume this is using a grid system and not an actual percentage type system that Panels used.
Yeah. We just put in the percentage numbers because we thought humans would understand them more than like 8 columns. So like what, 8 what? But like the percentage people will understand.
Very cool. Wow, that is very, very cool. Okay, excellent. Well, let's go into the last item that we've got here. Tim, you've been advocating for adding a recent news block in the dashboard, issue 3566. Can you give us a status update?
Sure. I think
and actually a summary too, since this is the first time. Sorry.
I think it's almost done. The story was after we got dashboard into core in that was just in 1.13, wasn't it? That a follow-up issue was to include some sort of a news block. And I had been noticing that as every time I sort of logged into that dashboard, I was kind of missing that block. It's like, this would be a really good for sort of outreach and communication with users. The ticket existed, so I just went ahead and commented on it. I was thinking about, like, is this worthy of advocating for or something? And as soon as I commented on it, there was a whole flurry of activity. And within a day or two, a pull request, and it was like, okay, do I even need to advocate for it? Because it's moving faster than I can keep up with. But I went ahead and put my name on it. We added it as a milestone candidate. I went ahead and did an issue summary because it's getting to be pretty long issue. There's about, I think there's like 60 comments or something, isn't there? And so I did kind of an issue summary to update us where we were at. One of the discussions was about whether or not the block that's pulling in the JSON feed should be flexible so that a user could reuse it. And I just sort of, based on the comments, it seemed like we wanted to, keep this very specific to the task we set out. And if there was interested in a flexible JSON block, I created a new issue for that where it could be discussed. Although I think the consensus seems to be that that's probably a contrib project. So then I just want to mention I went ahead and did, because I'd like feedback on this, I went ahead and created a contrib project without any code that said, here's a place for a module that adds some blocks to the dashboard. And I don't know if that's normally the way we would do things. I then actually did go ahead and create some code for a really simple dashboard block that just like has some useful links in it. But I would like to get some other dashboard blocks in that contrib module. So anyways, anything that people feel like they would have liked to have seen in the dashboard but hasn't got there, I think we could test it in this contrib module and then maybe bring it to core later. Anyway, the one other big holdup on this was we can't really create the block unless we have a feed, right? So the other issue that was created, I think Jen went ahead and created an issue for creating a feed from backdrop.org, backdropcms.org, and maybe Jeff, could you update me? I mean, have you basically created that and we're just waiting for that to get approved?
Yeah, he created it and assigned it to me, so it's stuck on me. I'm going to review it after the meeting. I took a quick look over it. It looks great, but I want to test it after the meeting.
But in theory, if you look at that and approve it, then the block works and we're mostly done, aren't we?
Yep.
Okay, so
just before the outreach meeting, I did a small pull request against yours, Jeff, that adds an icon, like a bell icon to the block. So, yeah.
Merged.
Thanks.
right.
So we have a beautiful bell icon for it.
Oh, that's cool. Huh. Cute.
So, any feedback on how that is working for someone like me in advocacy?
I can file a pull request against yours as well. I think your module, the contrib one, so that I can get an icon.
Well, my hope was that Jeff almost had a configurable block for a JSON feed, and maybe there's a way to pull that into my. I don't know if that's what you're planning to do, Gregory. But.
I plan many things. I'll reveal them in due time.
Okay. I'll wait and be surprised.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, you're doing it. You're advocating. and I think that this is a perfect example of how a lot of times people just need encouragement and direction, and then like getting that fulfillment, like that is enough of a drive to like, oh, there's somebody that's actually going to look at my work if I do it. And I think that everybody finds that to be very encouraging and a purpose for contributing. So there we go. Yay, this is great. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. That's all that we've got for the 114 status update. We've got lots of other issues that we'd like to get done in 114, of course. They're in the 114 milestone on GitHub. That's all that we've got for that update. We've got an item here for 115 that will be coming out January 15th next year, 2020. I don't think that we've got anything here to discuss really. It's just kind of like to be determined, like if there's anything that we'd like to add, then we can discuss it here. If you guys have anything that's seems like it would be 115. Like, should we be talking about anything at this point?
I think that, as we said in the previous meeting, this was added like as a loophole for the only one advocate. Sorry, one issue advocated by a person. So if I want to advocate another thing, it has to be on that milestone.
I kind of want to advocate for reference because I've been doing a bunch of work on that for a couple of my client sites, but I'm more motivated to work on file stuff for core because I think that's more urgent. So I have an idea of putting that on that list, but I'm not ready to do it yet. I want to get file closer before I commit.
Yeah, that would be a great candidate. I feel like reference is like currently like one of our largest weaknesses. Yeah. Not that there aren't options. There's unfortunately lots of contrib options, but the lack of a core reference is definitely a weakness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me use this opportunity. I don't know if I mentioned it before, something I've been thinking about advocating for that I know I couldn't do myself, but I understand it, was the backup and migrating core. But I'm curious, one, is that a good one? And two, how hard is it going to be? Is that going to be a really huge project, or is that manageable, do you think? So I'd like feedback on that, not necessarily now, but that might be.
Unless someone starts working on it, I personally don't have a clear idea of how large it is, but I think
probably not. I mean, I think the biggest question is like, how are we going to put it in core? Like, are we just going to take the module and put it in core? Or are we going to try?
I think that
part of.
I think that the consensus was that we get a very minimal thing of the requirement for core would be, because there's automated core updates now, we need a way for people to roll back. So it's more like a sort of like a checkbox, backup things before you update, and then some button that says things went wrong, restore things for me.
That makes me think it's probably more work.
Right.
Because we're going to have to like take it apart and put it back together where we want it.
Right. How does this discussion happen, in the issue queue?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think if you need to, Tim, like if you're advocating for this issue and you feel like you need to have a conversation, like bring it up like this in a meeting is good, or even calling on whoever it is that has thoughts on it to chat and get her at a specific time and be like, hey, let's hash this out and figure out what we want to do.
Okay.
Cool. All right, we've got one item in the general discussion and open Q&A, which is interesting. I don't know who put this in here, but there's a question. Can we bump the character limit per line to 120 for 2.x? So we currently have coding standards say at 80 characters, you indent and go down to the next line whenever possible. Who added this question?
Jeff, was it? No.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I know.
Comment?
Was it because of the reviewer list?
In part, but it's just something that bothers me a lot. It's kind of hard to meet that 80 character. It's not hard, but when it's there, it can be hard. When you get to the 80 characters, I mean. I think like Symfony and stuff does 120. A lot of JavaScript stuff does 120. It would make my life easier.
That's interesting because 80 characters is about the length a human is capable of reading before their eyes get uncomfortable. So this is like a number of characters that people strive for when you're writing content. Like even though your screen is really wide, you never want the content to get more than 80 characters. But I wonder if like developers have trained themselves to read differently than human beings as a general sense. And so that's why we've got these languages that are like.
Right. Speaking for myself, when I'm developing, if I see something in quotes and it goes off the screen, like in terms of trying to figure out what the code's doing, like I just skip that whole line and go to the next logic thing.
Yeah. I just feel like I don't, so Nate has some really good ideas about like how to make like if statements and stuff fit that I think also makes it make more sense as a human when you read it. Like if you turn each if statement into a variable and then like the variable says what the thing is, then it makes more sense to read that as a human. So I would wonder, like it would be good to see some specific examples of things that don't fit. Like string translations is a really good one where those are always really long. But if we could get a list of those, that might help us inform this decision of like when are the things that like we know always overflow our limit and we're going to want to push those. So yeah,
it's interesting the explanation that you just presented. I knew that for my front end point that you need to keep the width of a page at a specific sort of like pixels width. But I always thought that historically this 80 character limit was because that was the size of the screen in like DOS, command line, whatever, in like back in the days. And I thought that maybe this was a carryover from like the olden times.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also that where like people used to only be able to see how many characters on their screen, but I don't know, like, I don't know where that, like, where one becomes the other, like, where it's like, oh, I don't know, maybe it's better to like show more characters per line, or maybe it's like, I don't know. This is an interesting conversation. I would love to hash this out.
Yeah, let's make an issue, because there's a lot of different viewpoints and values here as well. Like, I just have to add my 2 cents here. Like having longer lines means that there's more code, and makes it so when you change or modify that line, it's harder to parse for a core committer like you, Jeff, or myself to like tell what that line is actually doing. And it's also more likely to be changed if one line is doing more. Then that means it's, like if it was 3 lines, then one of those 3 lines would be modified, and it would be simple to see what that one line was, the change in that one line did. But if it's all in one line, then we need to compute like the entire line altogether.
It's more likely to have merge conflicts if there's 2 different things changing the same line.
Yeah.
That's why though I'd like to see an example of like what lines overflow that now, because we might be able to set some conditions that would prevent that, or be like, if statements should always be handled this way, but string translations always handled this way, and then whatever those other things are, we could figure that out and be like, this is our character cutoff length, or I don't know. But it's hard to know without knowing what we're talking about.
Yeah,
because we don't have a linter in core, or in general, most people like in Contrib as well don't pay attention to that. Well, not most, some, I would say. There are cases even in core where we have properties in arrays where people have aligned vertically the equal greater than sign, just to make that one readable. And I can see the point that it does make it more readable, but it is against the agreed upon coding standards. So we either need to change the coding standards if that's decided, or just change the places in core where they violate that.
Yeah. Right now, even all discussion is a little bit moot, because we don't have any linting. Like you say, like so when things get merged, like we don't really have like a hard limit at all right now. We have a recommendation, and then like
create an issue for adding a linter.
Yeah, Jeff, I think you worked on that, didn't you, at some point? And there is a ticket even to just slowly go through all the files in core.
Yeah, I did. I think my current thinking is I think we should put a Travis YAML file back in specifically for the linting.
So can you configure that, like for our coding standards and stuff?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I do it in Drush, and I use it locally to check PRs in my own code.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of an advocate of exactly that. Maybe Travis might be okay, something else might also be okay. Like just having some kind of general purpose CI tool, again, I think would be valuable for us, because then we could add all kinds of other crazy stuff.
Can that be done as part of ZenCI, perhaps? Should we poke core? Maybe he has a solution in place already?
I think before we hook that into our testing thing, though, we need to run it and fix the stuff. Because if we have all of our tests failing because they don't match the standards, that's going to prevent anything from moving forward.
Yeah, there was a bunch too. I was like sort of fixing them, but then I tried to implement it in ZenCI and ran into some problems and never got back to it.
Yeah, there's also not sure if we're going off the rails here, but I ran across or I saw on a project recently that Grump PHP, it's spelled grump like a grumpy person, but then HP at the end, Grump PHP, is a code linter that only lints on the diffed files. So that would be valuable because then it's only if you're adding or changing new lines, like those are the lines that get linted rather than the entire project. And so that would make it so that we didn't have to fix all of the coding standards all at once, but rather every time we modified a file or line, then we'd have to fix it in that location. And so that would prevent any further code from being committed against coding standards without having to do the work of fixing everything all at once.
That's a good idea. But I would also like to point that the way that I've seen this work internally, the agency that I work for, the linting might be a different test. So we may have the PHP tests passing and then ignoring those, but slowly fixing all the tests. But yeah, I know it would be a bit noisy in the queue, in the pull request thing.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that as well. But the point is that maybe it's also dangerous to just have a whole I don't know, huge branch that we work on the linting. It will be a lot of work and it will take a lot of time.
Yeah, in that regard, I would say do it per file. Don't file any pull request that's doing that. It's bigger than one file.
Yep. Yeah, and then going back to the original question, I think maybe we could have an enforced limit of 120 characters. Like the linter would actually yell at you, like, or fail if you went over 120 characters. But our coding standard recommendation would still be 80. Possibly some kind of compromise like that, where we would actually have a hard limit that was
we still need to add
a soft limit that was like, subjective.
We still need to add exceptions to the hard limit for strings translations.
Sorry, what was that?
We still need to add an exception to the hard limit for translatable strings.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That we can't even, for translatable strings, you have to put it all on one line unless you want translators to translate return carriages, which you don't normally want to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or could we fix our translation strings so that all those are stripped out, our translation system?
But then how would you know if it's intentional or not?
Well, what if it's never intentional?
There are intentional situations though right now.
Like
email templates, welcome emails.
Oh, right. Okay.
Do you know if those are physical line returns in the file or if they're /n's?
I think I've seen both cases.
Okay.
Yeah, I think right now they're actual returns in the configuration files.
Oh, right, because it's all in JSON.
Yep.
And I've seen different implementations in translated strings. Some people choose to have multiple sort of like concatenating sentences in a variable and then doing the T's per line, I guess, or things like that, or adding /n's, or splitting paragraphs, like separate paragraphs and separate T functions in the variable, and then concatenating all these. So I've seen different things being done.
Yep. So I'm not quite sure where to go with this right now. Like we can open an issue to kind of discuss where we want to be, but because right now we don't have any linting, any decision we make would really just be kind of updating the coding standards page and saying like, you're really not allowed to have characters over 120 characters. So that would be valuable, I suppose, to establish an official standard and then update our coding standards page around the 120 characters versus 80 characters. I think a discussion around that would be valuable.
Yeah, we don't have an issue specifically for that, but there was an issue. So the work that Jeff did was based off of, I think there is an existing issue, but it might be in ops instead of the core issue queue.
A simple question. Jeff asked the question, can we do this by 2x? I don't know why this is dependent on 2x. That change could be made anytime, couldn't it?
Well, yeah, we don't want to update all four in X just to deal with line breaks. But I think we could make a decision now, and we could start doing the, like, if we're only changing a file, make sure that file matches the new thing at any time. So.
I don't feel it has to be a 2.x because 2.x is reserved for API breakages. That won't be a code breakage, but it would be just coding status changing. So that the actual code would still remain the same. So it can be done in 1.x. It will just take a long time it would be similar situation to the user experience tasks that we have. We cannot fix everything at once, so we have smaller tasks. Maybe we'll do the, I don't know, the .module files first, and then per project or per module in core or per folder or per file. It would just, it's unmanageable if we try to do it all at once. Unless, as I said, we create a separate branch, but then people need to work on that branch, and yeah, and we need to keep it up to date, so it doesn't. The idea that Nate proposed about slowly with each pull request fixing each file that the pull request touches, I think this is sort of like a progressive and iterative thing, and it makes sense if we can get it done.
So that's what I've secretly been doing with like removing the blank space at the top of every file.
I've been doing that as well.
Like CVS line. So every time I edit a file and I see it there, I take it out. And Doc at one point was like, "What are you doing with it?" And I'm like, "Well, it doesn't make sense to do all of core at once, but like anytime I edit a file, if I see it, I take it out." So I think like that kind of works. But we also don't have to change all of every file too. Like if we wanted to just make sure all of the new code we added or touched or modified met the new standards, that also might be a way to go about it. So that we just make sure anything that got changed or added matches the new standard.
I kind of secretly do that with my pull request. So you might see a dot from the doc block above what I'm working in. It's just, I saw it and it was annoying. I'll still do it. It's not related. It's not related to the thing, but it just annoys me. So I just fix it. It's harmless, especially comments and doc blocks. But yeah, the point is that if we do that consistently with each pull request, yeah, was that a, what did you say? Was it a Grump PHP you said?
From PHP, yeah.
Ironically, this might tie back into the composer discussion. Because like Grump you normally install with Composer, and in order to have Travis or whatever we do the linting, like it might be helpful to have the Composer file so that you could install Grump to do the linting.
Yeah, I can install the CI anyway.
Doesn't affect any of our contributors though, right? It would only be people working on core. So that's also a good candidate for like putting it in the Git, but not in the
package.
Arbol.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure how applicable that is. I was just saying, I think that might tie in.
Yeah, you could just in CI you just say composer require from PHP and it will do it.
Yeah, and actually now that I think about it, of course it wouldn't matter for core itself because you wouldn't be using Composer to get the pull request changes. You would be using the Git repository that includes the branch and everything. So
yeah,
never mind, not relevant. Let's see. And regarding the Travis file, I'll also give a call out to issue number 37 in the project module queue that I filed about a month ago. That is the issue for adding the ability to exclude certain files from the packager. So that would apply both to Composer and like any other CI tools that we build into core, like Travis or whatever. I also just purely advocated or wanted to advocate for that just because right now seeing what our Zen CI file is doing is really difficult because that lives like how Zen CI works. The file is on backtopcms.org instead of in the repository. And I think that we should move it into the repository so that we can see what the heck it's doing and then exclude it from the packager. So yeah, that we should get that issue figured out at some point just because between the Composer file, the Travis file, and the Zen CI file, like there's going to be some files that we want to exclude from the repository. Or
Jeff,
from the package.
Jeff, one question before I forget it. Now with the separate repo for Composer, what is the process of updating that with each new release that we have? Just merge changes in?
Yeah.
All right, so then we need to add that to the documentation, the processes for the releases, bug releases and minor ones.
Okay.
Right.
Yep. I'd really like to get some way to automate that.
Yeah. Because basically it won't be changing anything. It will be adding the Composer file on the repo. So you can merge blindly from upstream, from the main, backdrop, and just keep that composer file intact.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Anything else that we should discuss? We're kind of running long on this meeting. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining the meeting as always, and thank you for all of the great work this past week in Contrib and in Core and in documentation and in community. A lot of really great things. So thanks again, everyone. We'll see you guys next week and on the internet. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.